Good day. This is Red Hawk. I'm coming to you from Spokane, and this is the Deep End. Today, it's mid-October. The colors are moving into full display. So today I want it to just be a day of celebration. You know, we've talked about the three essential processes of the universe: differentiation, complexification, and semi-permeability. And everything has gotten together over and over under these processes and generated trillions upon trillions of little pieces that fit together as a single reality, a single process. And my friends, it is profligate. Profligate. I love that word. Recklessly extravagant or wasteful in the use of resources. Wasteful, extravagant, spendthrift, important, prodigal, immoderate, excessive, reckless. Nature is all of those things, and yet she's very economical, isn't she? She uses every single piece. Every single piece. Now, I'm going to recommend a book this morning. At least it's morning for us. It's called Pilgrims at Tinker Creek. It was written by Annie Dillard, and it's a celebration of sorts of this same sensibility. This is what she wrote, one of the pieces. Nature is above all profligate. Don't believe them when they all tell you how economical and thrifty nature is, whose leaves return to soil. Wouldn't it be cheaper to leave them on the tree in the first place? This deciduous business alone is a radical scheme, the brainchild of a deranged manic depressive with limitless capital. Extravagance. Nature will try anything once. This is what the side of insects say. No form is too gruesome, no behavior too grotesque. If you're dealing with organic compounds, then let them combine. If it works, if it quickens, set it clacking in the grass. There's always room for one more. You ain't so handsome yourself, you know. This is a spendthrift economy. Though nothing is lost, all is spent. I love that. Nature. So today again, I want to celebrate. The last podcast I talked about, and this is also from the same book, where Annie Dillard shows that under a rye plant, if you take a cubic inch of soil and you look at all the roots and all the hairs on those roots, and you took all those root hairs and lined them up, they would go 6,000 miles. That's profligate. That is magnificent. That is just worthy of celebration. And, you know, whether you're somewhere like where I am, where all the trees are turning and changing, or whether you're somewhere down south where it's insects that are always changing and coming in seasons, my friends, this profligate nature of nature gives way to you and me. And so that's what I want to celebrate today. That's what I just want to indulge ourselves in, because, my friends, it's worthy of celebration. It's worthy for us to take a moment and just bask in the utter reality that has given rise to not just us, but every other single thing, and how every other single things, they all lean on each other to create this magnificent world that allows us to be aware and conscious of and dance with. So that's my opening statement. I'll open with Marianne. Marianne Rudis is coming from Spokane Valley. Bob Hayes is coming from Florida. And we've been in this conversation for years in one way or another. So, Marianne, what do you say in this celebratory concept of nature?
Well, I think everything you said is it's so true. And, you know, we are in a season right now of the leaves changing, and it's just so beautiful. And the sky has been blue, and the clouds have just been picture perfect. And we've just had a couple of really, really beautiful, beautiful days. And not too long ago, we had some gray skies, and everything was silver and gray, and yet there was a beauty in that as well. And you mentioned the seasons, and as we go from one season to the next, and that this happens every single year, and it's this outward expression of time passing and the changes that happen, and we're part of that. And we go through seasons in our own lives, and the seasons that we witness in nature are they're metaphors for what we go through, possibly not in 12 months, but over our lifetime, we're going through all of these seasons. And it's just to be able to have the luxury of of going out into nature and just really just not trying to understand it, not trying to figure it out, but just to witness it and just to be a part of it, I think is one of my most life-enhancing human experiences.
Amen. Bob, what say you?
Well, I think that your description of nature as I don't know if I can say it, profligate, is a good one. But I think that there's also an aspect of nature that is very stern. You know, you mentioned that nature will try everything, but when nature tries something that doesn't work, there's no forgiveness. You know, if the saber-toothed tiger hadn't grown its teeth so long, it would still be around today. But it got just too long to survive. And I think that that's an important thing to also recognize in nature, you know, and you can take it into the realm of human behavior. You know, there's a lot of different ways to behave. There's a lot of different ways to try out things. But if you move too far, then nature is not going to forgive you. Nature's going to snap you off like a dried twig.
And that's a whole other podcast, I'm going to suggest.
But that's a beautiful thing, too, because if it didn't do that, then nothing would ever be able to find the correct path, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, and we know that the human species of who we are was predicated by other species being defeated or dying off. So we see that, and even in Annie Dillard's statement that I laid out, she even says that, you know, they're just discarded. But I think it's important, what I want to see today is how many pieces there are and that they all do fit. And yeah, it's true, we could render ourselves insignificant and be faded out. And that's, again, a whole other podcast. But today I want to celebrate, because here's what I've learned. When I go out in nature, something in me clicks and I realize I'm not in nature. I am nature. And that is a whole piece of connectivity that resituates the narrative in which I participate. And I think that this is a huge, someone said they like Halloween the best. And I have to say, I'm starting to like Halloween the best because of all the differences that it brings forth. It's what we gather around are the differences, are the grotesque, are the little pieces that didn't fit or that are part of a narrative that is, out to scare us into becoming better human beings or whatever. The magnificence of nature isn't just out there, it's in here too. And as I grow old and little things start going wrong, I realize how many things have gone right. My God. I'm in my 70s now. Mary Ann's in her 60s. Bob is in his 70s. This is a magnificent thing that we're inside of, and it's inside of us. And I want us to recognize that. I want us to see that the profligate nature of nature is us, and that we have a growing edge that is trying stuff all the time And stuff that doesn't work, this gets into the algorithms. An algorithm is you try it. If it works, you keep going. If it works, you keep going. If it doesn't work, you discard it or go another way. It's this process, again, of differentiation, complexification, and semi-permeability that continues to generate fresh and new pieces to participate in the whole. And I think that is an amazing thing. Someone wrote on Facebook, they said, they were quoting a Bible, man and woman, he created them. He created them man and woman. And my response was, you think God's done? I don't think so. I think the whole thing is still doing it. It's still doing it. And we're inside of it. And now we have an intentional role. And if we can't see how important the profligate nature of everything is, because we begin to see that our own waste has a use. We've started recycling. Think about that. Even our waste now, we're starting to see can create methane, which can create energy. We're starting to see how it's all connected. And I think that appreciation is an important part of our story, and why we need to stop every once in a while and just say, holy shit, this is fucking amazing.
I think something that you said is so true. It's amazing how many things go right when there are so many things that could go wrong. And I also love the book that you were talking about. We are now becoming more and more aware of our intentional role in where we're going and what we have the opportunity to create as a species, as we grow and evolve. Yeah.
Well, and I go back to that Jewish word tzedakah, where everything is running smoothly. If you have an engine and everything is running smoothly, it's peak performance. Nature has that to it. And we can screw it up, but nature's got all the time in the world to rectify, either through us or in spite of us, what we mess up. We don't know how that rectification happens, but I'm convinced that our own intentionality, if it is not based in an understanding of the magnificence of what we're part of and parcel of, we will probably be doomed. And that brings Bob's first thought expression to mind.
Well, the thing is, we can appreciate the magnificence of it, but we also have to be careful, because if we push things too far in any different direction, then we can throw it out of balance. And that's, it's the balance of nature that is probably the most magnificent of all of it, because nature is self-correcting. That's the essence of systems theory. You have a system, which of course nature and the planet and all of our little pieces of it are different levels of systems, and the system acts to preserve itself against all sorts of extraneous inputs and things, but it can only go so far. And that's what we need. We need to be appreciative of the magnificence and diversity of nature, but we also have to be aware of the need to keep a balance. That's where we're getting into, climate change and all of these different problems that are forcing us to look back at nature and say, well, wait a minute, let's try and preserve what is so magnificent.
Yeah. And the interconnectedness of it. Go ahead, Mary Ann.
Well, no, go ahead.
I was going to say the interconnectedness of it is something that mystics have been onto for 10,000 years, but science and the human family is just now starting to see it. You talk about climate change. All of a sudden you're putting fresh water, the ice the glaciers are melting. They're putting fresh water into the ocean, which bifurcates the water, which makes it unhealthy for some species to live, which means they become extinct, which, over and over we're seeing the interconnectedness of it and how we have to work within that magnificence. We can't just bring something from the outside in. Well, actually we can, but that's not to say it's not going to have a negative effect. Enter the atomic bomb and atomic powered, power plants, atomic powered submarines. So there's goodness to that, but there's also existential issues. So we have to acknowledge the magnificence. And again, it gets back to me, the stories. We have to have stories and narratives that allow us, that invite us into that celebration. Marianne?
Well, the word that just keeps coming into my mind is appreciation. And if we can become, grounded in appreciating the diversity, appreciating the beauty, appreciating the delicate balance, appreciating all of the things that nature, that we are a part of. And, you're right. Mystics have been talking about this for centuries, right? They were able to see it. And now we are at a place where it is becoming scientifically seen because we're able to name things and measure them and prove that this actually is something that exists. Where if you go out and I remember a book from years ago, the Celestine Prophecy, and what the author had said was he had an experience where he sat on a mountaintop and could feel that he was completely one with nature, one with it all. And those kind of experiences tended to be kind of written off, but I think they're becoming more and more acceptable now, that experiential, individual experiential part of this. And it helps that we are now able to measure that there are things are giving off energy, things are connected, and we're seeing it much more clearly. And so for me, I need to always remember that I'm part of something bigger than myself and appreciate that.
Amen. And the human family is moving from these broad stroke understandings to finer and finer strokes that bring out these subtle nuances that underlie our own existence. And we're starting to be able to intentionally address those finer subtleties in such a way, and understanding how they affect each other in a big way, that they vector out into real consequences. So I think that the human family is moving just what you said, Marianne, and I'm hoping we'll get finer and finer stories that allow us to participate in these more subtle levels of reality. Personally, I think that's happening. For me, it happened in sci-fi originally. And now it seems to be permeating all our stories. I mean, even Captain Underpants, they're time traveling. And I'm going, what? And my 5-year-old is just accepting it. Well, they were in this time, and now they're in this time, and they're meeting themselves in that time. He can explain to me what's going on, and I'm going, wow. What will you see? I think in that song, It's a Wonderful World, they'll know much more than I'll ever know. They'll learn much more than I'll ever know. I'm just totally amazed at not just nature out there and nature in here, but I'm amazed at civilization. And I've shared with you before, when I was 5, I embedded my root question of how does the world works. I'm still working on that. I fly in a plane and I look out over all the houses, all the apartments, and there's an inch of file, I guess it's digital now, on every house with lawyers and taxes and all these different things on owning a home, a piece of land. And I go, and each of those pieces of paper keeps somebody in business. It allows somebody to feed their family. I'm amazed at civilization. I think the same magnificence that we can see in nature, civilization is is slowly moving into an analog of that. And I think that the problem is we haven't gotten organic yet. We're still ka-chunk, ka-chunk, mechanical, electrical, digital, and we haven't moved. But the magnificence of civilization, I mean, I am quite amazed and blown away by the concept of civilization. Go ahead, Marianne.
Well, and as you were saying that, and it's all based on cooperation. And I think that that's another part of the nature. There's a lot of cooperation that goes on. There's a lot of competition as well. And I think that as we start to appreciate these delicate balances, we can learn better cooperation versus competition. And I think that is what's going to move us forward.
Yeah.
I think that we really need to understand more about the interconnectedness. We don't recognize all of those interconnections. Something just got, going back to climate on this one, but I never realized until my daughter and son-in-law who live in New Orleans are faced with a dilemma that occurs because of what's going on in the Ohio, Tennessee valleys and the upper Mississippi. They don't have enough fresh water because there's been a drought in middle America. And because they don't have enough fresh water, the salt water from the Gulf of Mexico is pushing its way up the Mississippi. And they're being warned that within a couple of months, there won't be any drinking water. They'll have to bring water in, bottled or tanker trucks or whatever. And it never occurred to me how interconnected one part of the country could be with the other.
Yeah.
And it's those things that are everywhere. And the more we become aware of those, the more we become able to deal with them, able to find a balance to counteract certain things.
And that's where we are today. There is a new balance coming into shape where we are starting to be able to address the deeper things. We're moving from content, these people, oh my God, we got no water, to understanding a context for no fresh water and starting to see the systems and how they work, and that we cannot divorce ourselves from those systems because those systems equal life itself. And this is part of what the ecological/environmental revolution is about. It's about nature saying there are limits, and you are learning these limits now in a new way, and you're starting to understand those limits within a context of interconnected and interdependent ways of seeing. And I think that interdependent piece is part of where the stories that we tell ourselves, we need to spend more time on that. In my humble opinion.
Yeah.
Yes, because we used to celebrate independence as the loftiest, and now we are interdependent, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, that in our history in this country, when we got upset about something going on in our town or village or whatever, we just moved west, and there was always a new section of land that we could claim for ourselves or steal it from whoever was there and feel freedom. Well, now there's no place left to go. We're all in it together. Go back to Buckminster Fuller's idea of spaceship Earth. There is no other place to be. We are here and we're all in it together.
And what we're talking about is a broader sense of independence. Independence is a farce without an understanding of its relationship to interdependence. Because the fact is there are limits to what we can do and not do. Murder was one of the first limits the human family adapted. Taboo of incest was another limit that the human family discovered early. There are limits, And those limits keep us from hurting each other, and I pray keep the amount of suffering to a minimum. And I think that that's a huge piece of the human family, especially right now. The time of this podcast, the Hamas-Israeli war has broken out, and we're all, I hope we're all in prayer about, the suffering there, because it's huge. So the whole concept of interdependence, if we do not have a clear view of that, our independence will always be skewed and will always become an indulgence, in my mind, if that makes sense.
And that in itself is a danger to the whole species if we're too indulgent.
That's right. I mean, we're going to have to solve some huge problems. However, the solutions in my mind are rooted in our connecting to the magnificence and profligate nature of nature herself, and to understand that this system can work for itself. For instance, there was a plant that was spewing toxic stuff into their wastewater holding, not tank, but it was a huge, almost a lake. And they were trying to figure ways to get rid of the poison, filter it out. And then they found out there was a lily pad that if you put it in there, it automatically translated that poison into something good and cleaned the water. We're starting to understand how nature works and to see how nature can work for us and how we can work for nature, and that relationship has to be reciprocal. We must be concerned for nature, and I think nature, some say she's indifferent to us, but I always say, it just took the universe 14 billion years to give a shit, and that's called the human being. And we are the place where nature actually cares for itself, herself, ourselves, if in my mind. And again, this is all rooted. If we can create more stories of the relationship between our independence and interdependence, if we can create more stories that allow us to share in this profligate aspect of nature, I believe there are solutions and responses that are totally healthy and healing, and also models of wholeness that can come out of that. That's my best hope. And I'll be honest, I think we're in for a big hurting first. All the lessons are coming due.
Well, the lessons are out there already in nature. And that's what we need to learn. The patterns within nature of diversity, of balance, of the strengths and weaknesses of different approaches and so forth. Those are things that we need to look at, learn from, and then apply to our own lives and our own behaviors. And I think that's the way that we can hopefully avoid the dangers of the harshness of nature.
Amen. And I'm going to let that be, Bob, I'm going to let that be your final comment. Marianne, final comments?
Well, I was just going to say, and I think that the mindset that we've had for centuries, that our task, our job was to control nature and to have dominion over nature and be able to bend it to our will. And now the word you used earlier was reciprocal, and that is so important. It is a reciprocal relationship, and we have to be a part of that. And I would just encourage everyone to go out and sit by the river or walk in the woods or go down to the ocean or spend some time in nature and just feel it.
Yeah, no kidding. And the word you said, that reciprocal, it really is a dance. Everything within the grape oneness is dancing with everything else. And we like to, again, Marianne, I think you said it beautifully, see ourselves outside of that. But really, we're dancing within it. We're not dancing at the rim. We're dancing inside the circle. And you know what? We're aware of that. How did that happen? How did we become self-aware? And there's all these stories, about evolution, but there were early ancient stories, and I'm going to talk about some of them. The one I love talking about is the Garden of Eden, because within Christianity and even within Judaism, boy, has that story been twisted and turned by a guy who had great sexual insecurities named Augustine. Oh my God, we're going to tear Augustine a new one, because you know what? He had family of origin problems that were huge, and our whole theology ends up being based on some of that original sin, the whole concept of sin. No. We're going to leave that in our dust. Till next time, my friends, be aware, celebrate the magnificent and profligate nature of your own being, and in all things, dance with the one. Be well.